Hello, welcome to Unit 4, Topic 2, Limiting Factors of the Ecosystem for 7th grade Science Advanced. All right, the key standard that the state expects you to be able to understand and know is SC.7.L.17.1. Explain and illustrate the roles of relationships among producers, consumers, and decomposers in the process of energy transfer in a food web. So learning goals, I can, we can, describe the flow of matter and energy through an ecosystem, explain the role of producers, consumers, and decomposers in an ecosystem, compare the types of interactions that occur among organisms within an ecosystem, predict the existence of some local food webs, observe, record, and evaluate evidence of the existence of specific food chains within a local ecosystem, and explain how trophic levels are decided. Also, you need to be able to describe the different ways trophic levels are modeled and explain how populations on the same and different trophic levels interact. So just an overview, everyone plays a specific role in a food web of life. You are very important to the survival of the system no matter what role you play. So it doesn't matter what you are. If you're a living organism within the food web, you play a key and important role. As you study more about the ecosystems and cycles in life, you will see the terms food chains and food webs. They describe the same series of events that happen when one organism consumes another to survive. Food web is a more accurate term since every organism is involved with several other organisms. Cows might be food for humans, bacteria, or flies. Each of those flies might come in contact with a frog, a microbe, or a spider. The food chain web describes how energy passes to other plants and animals through different trophic levels. There are dozens of connections for every organism. When you draw all of those connections and lines, you get what we call a web-like shape. A food web is a tool that illustrates the feeding relationship among species within a specific habitat. So it's a connection of multiple food chains to show the interaction between different organisms in that particular ecosystem. When you draw multiple food chains together, you end up with a food web. These represent relationships in ecosystems more accurately and give you a much clearer visualization of how each animal affects others. So food chains and food webs both help us better understand how energy is transferred through an ecosystem. However, food chains and food webs have some big differences. So a food chain represents a unique connected path of energy flow in an ecosystem. So in this example, we start with our producers, which are seeds. The shrew eats the seeds and the fox eats the shrew. So the energy starts out in the producer, it's consumed by the shrew, and then the shrew uses that energy to grow and to do things. And then the fox eats the shrew and takes that energy and converts it to the ability for it to grow and for it to have the energy to do various activities. This means a food chain shows a single pathway from the producer to the consumer and how the energy flows in a pathway. However, there are many overlapping food chains in an ecosystem, and most plants and animals are part of several different chains. In the example, the shrew isn't just eaten by the fox, and the fox doesn't only eat shrews. So you can only see part of the whole story of that ecosystem. So in essence, a food chain is just a single snapshot of one part of a food web. So the food web definition in biology can be explained as a visual representation of all food chains which are connected in a single ecosystem. So you can look right here, the food chain I showed you was seed, shrew, fox, and if you look at the food web, that's the food chain that's part of the overall food web right here. An ecosystem contains living things that are all part of multiple food chains. All of these food chains are then connected to create a food web. This helps us to visualize a path of energy and nutrients between different living organisms. And animals that don't eat the same food every day and like to interact with various prey. So a food chain alone might not be enough to represent the complexity of the ecosystem that we're trying to discuss. This is where food webs come in, by combining multiple food chains. Food webs show you how energy travels all around the habitat. Within the food web, there are a number of individual food chains. So we can look at the grass, rat, fox, snake, and hawk. That's one food chain. We can also start with the grass, antelope, cheetah, and hawk. We can do the tree, rhino, lion, or you could do the tree, giraffe, lion. All of these are individual food chains that are part of the whole food web in this particular ecosystem. So you'll also notice some animals have more than one source of food, like the lion, the snake, the hawk. This gives them more options for food. If one of the other food options decreases or disappears, they have other options available to them. So the lion, for example, eats both the giraffe and the rhino. If one were to become unavailable, it will still have a source of food to survive. The antelope, however, relies on grass for food. So if the environment changes in the amount of grass and it quickly depletes, the antelope would have to adapt and look for food elsewhere at a different location. So every part of the food web is affected by another part. The population of the predator if the population of the predator were to increase, then the prey's population would decrease. If the population of the prey, assuming it's a herbivore, were to increase, then the amount of plants and green vegetation would also decrease.
Last time we put a polar bear in the desert, and I still feel bad about that. The good news is that in real life, a polar bear probably won't just wander into the Sahara. But not everything stays in the same habitat all the time. A new species might come into a habitat, a species might die off, even the habitats themselves can change as a result of things like floods and droughts. Point is, habitats, and the food webs they support, can get out of whack, and sometimes it's not pretty. Let's look at what happens when an ecosystem gets out of balance. Last week, we learned that a habitat is home to a tangle of food chains called food webs. The animals depend on each other for food, but they don't just need each other. They rely on the non-living things in the habitat too. This interaction of living and non-living things in a habitat is called an ecosystem. The things in an ecosystem are all connected. Just like when you touch one part of a spider web and the whole thing vibrates, when one link in the food web is threatened, it can shake up the whole ecosystem. Let's see what might happen, for example, if an ecosystem loses a species. Since we're talking about food webs, I think we should look at spider monkeys. They're called spider monkeys because they hang upside down from their tails with their arms and legs dangling. This is somehow completely adorable. These primates live in a tropical rainforest habitat, which is just bursting with some of the coolest creatures out there. Toucans, jaguars, sloths. As we learned last time, these animals need each other to survive. And spider monkeys happen to play a particularly important role in the rainforest food web. They eat mostly fruit, which contains seeds, and we know that seeds are how plants make more plants. When a spider monkey snacks on a berry, he gets to enjoy the tasty fruit while also doing the plant a solid favor. When the monkey moves on to another part of the forest and passes the fruit, he leaves the seeds behind. Wait a while and then voila, you have a new plant. Imagine thousands of monkeys eating thousands of fruits every day. More monkeys equals more plants and trees. Those trees support lots of other animals. Insects and sloths eat those plants too. And more spider monkeys, insects, and sloths mean more food for carnivores. Leopards dine on the sloths and spider monkeys, while frogs eat the insects. And of course our decomposers, like fungi and bacteria, break down leftover plant and animal matter. So we're talking around 50,000 plant and animal species that rely on these plants. Now imagine the spider monkey population starts to decline. Maybe they're hit with a strange new disease, or maybe humans overhunt them. If the monkeys aren't around to eat the fruit, then the seeds aren't scattered around and the forest stops growing, leaving fewer fruits for fewer monkeys. Not only that, fewer plants means less food for other animals, like insects and our sloth friends. That means the insect and sloth numbers start to decline. And that means less food for the animals that eat them. All of a sudden, none of the animals in our ecosystem have enough to eat, all because of the loss of one species. Do you see how this could get really bad? Remove one piece of the food web and you might knock down the whole thing. That's bad news for us, too. The good news is that ecosystems want to be in balance. After a natural disaster like a forest fire or a flood, things might be wacky for a while, but habitats can usually get back to normal. But if things get really bad, the habitat might change forever. The old species will leave, searching for a better place to live. New species will come in. Life will keep going, but it won't look the same. In every ecosystem, the plants and animals are connected. You can't mess with one species without affecting all the others. Food webs are delicate, like spider webs. We don't want to be all crazy pants and just go knocking them down.